the weirdest, craziest tail on a surfboard that I reckon I've ever seen. Welcome back, guys. This is Travis. Appreciate everyone tuning in to another hero's journey. And in this hero's journey, we're diving in to another crazy Tomo shape, the SCI-FI 2.0. And I have it upside down for a reason, because this tail is by far the wildest tail on a surfboard I've ever seen. He calls it his batwing tail, I believe. Let me just confirm this. And I'm having trouble confirming it, but pretty much it looks like a Batman logo that he shoots up into the sky, and you know he has to come save the day and save his main girl, I forget her name, from the Joker and Two-Face and all them. But I'm pretty interested in trying out this board. I still haven't ridden it yet. Let's just let the cat out of the bag here. But I'm super keen because the team at FIREWIRE one of the guys recommended this, and again, this was another board like the Revo Max, not on my radar at all. But now that I'm a Tomo fanboy, I was stoked, and I am stoked to give it a go. Now, what this board does have is a very similar bottom to the Revo Max, at least with the quad concave right here, but I believe it gets to a single somewhere around here, which I don't really get because it feels like there's a lot going on. Let's just read a second about this, because it's a really interesting board, and this is the re-release in the I-Bolic Technology. So the first SCI-FI was a classic and really redefined and helped continue to make Tomo a household name, especially with his concave he does here and the spine. But the SCI-FI has this crazy, really wild tail where it kind of does like an indentation, like on most fishes, but then it does another indentation, and then another, and then it kind of does this little point at the end. It's very unique, and the best profile to look at it is like this, because you can really just see how it's very different. Like there's the mashup in the background here. The mashup has a regular swallow, short little swallow. This is not a swallow, obviously. This is, they call it, again, I want to get this right, the batwing. They're not going to say probably because I need to see it right now. And if anyone in the chat wants to time in, the double bat tail. The double bat tail. So yes, it's very similar to when they shoot the logo in the sky and you see Batman's double little thing. It kind of looks like this. And I think what the concept of this overall is essentially you're creating a couple points similar to the mashup in the background over there. The swallow has 2 points, and what makes a swallowtail really great is that you can pivot off of each point. Well, this is creating essentially like a couple different swallowtails in one, at least with the points that you're able to pivot off of. And I think that's why this has become such a popular board. And again, it's also from Slater Designs. So it's pretty much a collab of Slater Designs and Tomo, as you can see here upside down. But what's really cool is that, this was back when Tomo was kind of like creating stuff with Kelly. And the first one was like really some of their first stuff when they were starting to get wild with different shapes and different things. And now, this was still, the first one was back when he was still figuring out like a lot of this new technology. But this reiteration is really cool because, again, it's in the I-Bolic Technology. The old one was in LFT, I believe, which I do like a lot. I would say the only issues with LFT are it kind of dings easily. It's a little brittle, not that dissimilar than a Lay's potato chip in terms of nice form and stuff, but it can kind of like crunch, kind of like a PU board. The I-Bolic is it's epoxy still, but it's I think the glass, or it just has a foam stringer as opposed to a wooden stringer, and there's something about the glassing that is a little less dingy. I'm not sure exactly how they changed it over, but I think I-Bolic is supposed to be the new LFT, and helium is kind of like the other option. Kelly seems to ride a lot of his boards in the I-Bolic. You can even see the little logo right here. Right here, I-Bolic SCI-FI 2.0. The SCI-FI 1.0, or just the SCI-FI, didn't have the I-Bolic. It was just, again, LFT. And he might have even had some in PU, I'm not sure. But you see right here, Slater Designs and Tomo. So this reiteration only came out like less than a year ago. And I think it's really cool because it kind of creates like a new stoke on the board, and someone like me who has been sleeping on Tomo and all those shapes and all this kind of reiteration of surfing. It's interesting because again, this is a board I would look at. I kind of wouldn't be interested in. I mean, again, it's a pretty pointy nose. I'm all about the round nose now, especially after I'm a Revo Max addict. I want the round nose. But what this does actually is, because the tail, there's a lot going on, and the wide point is actually a little bit front of center, it still is going to have a bunch of foam up here. And even feeling it, you can feel the foam carries up nicely. This is also the 6.2 at 38.9 liters, I believe. So I am oversizing it a little bit, especially after the Revo Max, which I think was perfectly sized for me. It's getting colder, the water is getting rougher, and I'm getting lazier. So I want to go up in volume when I can. It's 6'2", 20 5/8, 2 3, 13 16ths, 38.9 liters. So it's kind of a big boy. But I think when you enjoy bigger boards like I do, you're not going to mind it too much. But I guess we'll see, and we'll let the verdict happen after I get a good go on it. But the I-Bolic normal technology, so the Revo Max was an I-Bolic volcanic. This I-Bolic non-volcanic means it doesn't have essentially the basalt wrap around it, which is kind of like a carbon fiber wrap. To me, this feels a little heavier. I think the volcanic wrap, even though I thought it was heavier in general than the normal wrap they do with just fiberglass. Let me just make sure about this. Yeah, with fiberglass lamination. So it's fiberglass, kind of like a PU board, as opposed to the volcanic wrap. The volcanic wrap, I think in general, is going to be stiffer, and I thought it was heavier, but when I picked this up, this feels heavier to me than the Revo Max. Again, it's a few more liters, but the Revo Max, when you pick it up, it feels like a feather. It's unbelievably light. This kind of feels normal. It does still feel lighter than if it was PU, and this will be the first straight I-Bolic I've ridden, so that'll be interesting. But I really like the I-Bolic volcanic, and I did not think that I would like it as much as I did, especially because I've ridden the I-Bolic in helium, and it is, or the volcanic in helium. It is sweet, but definitely caters more like the stiffer, even longboard kind of surfing, at least with the boards I've ridden with. And like the boards I've seen it with are kind of beefier, stiffer boards. You're not going to mind that much. But the straight I-Bolic, I think, is Kelly's preferred technology because it's going to be close enough to PU, but then also not be like as kind of stiff, but then also not be as brittle as LFT, and that's kind of why they were going away with LFT. There might have been some of the color issues as well, but so far there's been a lot of good stuff about the I-Bolic, and I think it's cool too because it kind of sounds like Bolics. So if you're on boardroom.shop.uk or boardshop.uk, or you live in England, you can be like, oh, Bolics, and that's the board right here. But what I-Bolic is too, it's essentially, it's a foam super condensed stringer, and you can really see it here, whereas the Revo Max, you couldn't see it that much. I don't know if it was this wide, and it might even be that the normal I-Bolic has a wider stringer than the I-Bolic volcanic, because the wrap might mean you don't need it to be as compressed there. I just couldn't see it as much. But this actually is showing you more where that foam super compressed, dense foam is. And I think it's right here, and then it's along the rails. I mean, this could just be color as well, but you can see up here, it's actually a little bit to the left. So it's not like perfectly center. And that means to me that it is like the stringer is this. This is just like the paint job over top. So I think that's pretty cool that, they're trying out these new things. And again, if Kelly's riding this board, I think we can all be pretty stoked that it's going to work how you want to work. And again, I usually have not been riding Kelly Slater boards because I feel like his boards are sized kind of small. But these ones are definitely a little more user-friendly. I mean, even like the 510 is 32, the 511 is 34 almost. 6.0 is 35.4, so it's kind of getting a little bit more to like a standard shortboard volume and length. And I actually was even going to go bigger than this, but in the end, it's like, I feel like with the bigger shortboards, that's where like you got to go either mid-length, because sometimes it's like the S-Boss and the Boss Up. You can go bigger S-Boss, but in the end, the Boss Up is going to have like a little bit of variance that makes it more like a proper mid-length than just if you supersize a normal board. But I'm really keen to like give the straight I-Bolic a go. And again, what's really the whole, chef's kiss about the board is this crazy tail. Now, if anyone in the chat has ridden this tail or ridden this kind of board, it's kind of like the Cymatic, I believe it's called. Yeah, the Cymatic. So to me, the Cymatic almost looks a lot like a Revo Max, just shorter. And it has the 5-fin setup. I think that's what makes the Revo Max kind of special is he's essentially takes like the boards that have all these fin setups, and when you make it a lot simpler and you give it just one fin setup, like the Machado Kato or the Revo Max, first off, it makes you understand the board more, because like sometimes I think boards are set up for certain fins in mind. I talk about this a lot, but manufacturers, it's a little easier to sell a board that has more fin options than just a tri or just a quad. I think FIREWIRE does a good job though with sometimes having boards like the Seaside, Revo Max, the Two Fish, where it is dedicated, so they're kind of telling you this board was designed with this in mind. Now this board is 5-fin setup, so we can all be happy about that, because I know you guys love your multiple fin setups. One day you can be like me and want only certain fin setups. You have to make less decisions in life, because making decisions is the bane of my existence. But I've heard that this goes really great as a quad, and I'm stoked because I have the Endorphin tri-quad fin. So it's like, it's the tri-fin setup or the quad fin setup. Now, what I'm realizing with the Endorphin fins, I've used a lot of the NVS fins, which are almost like the complete opposite of this in terms of these are light. NVS fins, the ones I like that are all fiberglass, are like they're not light. They're actually kind of heavy and stiff, but that's why I like them. But then you get a fin like this, and it's just so unbelievably light. It's by far the lightest fin I've ever held. I mean, just holding it with one hand, it's actually pretty unbelievable that this fin is this light. So I think that with the board being slightly oversized, or even if you got a regular size, the fins that I think are the best bet for this are so light. That combined with the crazy bat cave tail creates like a lot of movement back here. You're not really held up by the tail being like too locked in, because there's all these little pivot points, and the fins are so light and loose, or just light, that they're going to let you work with the tail. I like these too because the center fin, if you want to ride it as a tri, is a good amount smaller than the other fins. So that's pretty nice, because I always like when a center fin is a little smaller. It's almost mimicking the 2+1 fin. And these days I feel I reckon that a lot of fin setups, the center fin is smaller, even if it's a smidge smaller, because it creates just a teeny bit more release in the tail, which most of us kind of want. Um, and I think you can even ride this as a twin fin or a 2+1. I'd be interested to see how the Endorphin 2+2 works on this with the bigger trailer. Or I can't say trailer anymore. But let's talk a little bit more about the board, and in particular, I want to talk about why this board is so stapled in the quiver for everyone. Because just reading about it, much of the magic of the sci-fi comes from Daniel's innovative approach to tail design and concave configuration. The SCI-FI 2.0 combines his original double bat tail and his quad inside single concave. So I'm a little confused because I guess it means that there's a single concave with the quad concave, but I think it means that up here the board's kind of flat, and then once it gets down to the tail, it turns into the quad Revo Max type tail. It's very much like the Revo Max right here. It does the two big channels, which are really great. That's why I think this actually might be okay as a twin, because the Revo Max, that's what makes it great as a twin, is this area. But it's a lot more upright right here, the spine on the Revo Max. On here, it's actually it's less pronounced. So the spine is there, but it's not maxed out like the Revo Max. And then it does kind of stop shorter up the board, like kind of midway, probably right around a little past the front, probably right at the widest point. And then that's where I think the single concave is. But it kind of tricks me, and I think it's a double. But then no, I feel the quad right here too, or at least the spine coming up. So what it might actually be is the single concave means it's flat, but then it's just the quad of the back does extend, so there are little indentions up on a flat surface. I mean, I'm literally thinking aloud right now, but that's where I'm trying to get that from, because I don't think the Revo Max is. He calls that I don't think he calls that the quad single concave. He calls that the V quad concave, which means it's like a bigger V out the back, and even a V more so up here. And maybe that's why the spine seems bigger in the Revo Max, because it's even more concaved here and here. Yeah, this board is cool too, because I'm scared of Kelly boards because he rides like 27, 29. I mean, he was talking about riding 34-liter boards at like humongous jaws and stuff. I was like, okay, you're just wild. So it's like his boards, I think, are usually kind of, they're made for him, like the best surfer in the world. So a lot of us can't really compete with that, but a lot of people do like his boards, and the Slater Designs, I see a lot of good surfers riding these. So I'm keen to give it a go. And this is definitely a little bit out my wheelhouse, because I'm obsessed with Rob Machado type boards like the Mashup now, where there's more space up here. But this does actually carry a good bit, where even though it has the pointy nose and it's pretty shortboardy, it's a shortboard for sure. It's actually thick enough. It's pretty boxy, and the Y point is further up. And I think you could step up here, because it's going to hold. It's not going to dig in too much, because the nose also keeps its thickness pretty well. It doesn't get like potato chip thinny here. Even like the Mashup and the Machado Cotto, I think, get thinner right here. This keeps the thickness pretty nice. But let's see what he says about the bat wing, because I know that's the main concept. That's a little weird. But what makes the board the board. So he's claiming that the result for the board, the tail, is it controls speed uncommonly well for how wide it is, making it a quiver enhancement. It enhances, yeah. And I can see what he means by that because it is wide, like the tail is wide, but because he gives you so many little indentions here, it hides the width a little bit. And that's, again, more pivot points are always good. Like this is why a round tail kind of isn't your best bet for like small waves, because really all you're gonna have is one thing to dig in and out. A swallowtail is kind of gonna give you 2 points to dig in each one. So this even has more points. So it's almost probably like kind of like a domino effect, where it's just like going in and out, and each point is digging in the water a little more. So it's interesting to see, and I've heard a lot of great things about it. I think it's a great board for the wave pool for the surf parks. Like I know Jackson Dorian had the original, or had one of like in his mystery bag. Yeah, they had FIREWIRE had a video come out 4 or 5 years ago now. And I remember this video, which is hilarious. And he's getting all these boards. And I think this is when the SCI-FI 2.0 was out, but it wasn't in I-Bolic yet. It was still an LFT. Up there he is. I'm going to get copyrighted. But yes, right there it says Tomo plus LFT. So that's when this, most of the boards were an LFT, like Seaside and Beyond and some others. So I think that's what's cool about this, is they even had a video, and like they're saying it's a re-release because the I-Bolic is a lot different than the LFT. It's a lot stronger. Like I think the Volcanic does add some more strength to it, but I-Bolic in general, I can just tell like holding it that it's the LFT is great, but it is I-Bolic in general. I can just tell like holding it that it's the LFT is great, but it is like, I mean, you could almost like push it with your fingers and indent it some. It might be even because the fiberglass on this works a little better with the I-Bolic. Let's even see what I-Bolic kind of is. So really they're saying I-Bolic is only, it's called I-Bolic because of the stringer and the rails are condensed foam. But I don't know why that makes it different than LFT, because if LFT might just be because of the wooden stringer. But if it's all the same epoxy in there, I wonder why this is stronger than LFT. I've been trying to figure that out because, again, LFT is amazing, but there's a reason they're, I think, going away with it. Because, again, like my poor Seaside and Beyond, love the board, but I've like broken out both fin plugs. It might be a little more because of the FCS. And actually, it hasn't gotten like too many dings. But when I was filming a live stream the other day, if you guys go watch it, I was doing the Seaside and Beyond versus Revo Max. And the board literally kind of fell, and then it stuck into like the desk right here, and kind of just like, and pretty much it was like taking a piece of fiberglass or like a piece of foam and just sticking something into the foam. Like the fiberglass barely protected the board. Whereas the Revo Max like fell over when I was filming. Sorry, FIREWIRE, I shouldn't have said that. It was okay though, but like it literally fell over, and I was like, oh, that board's effed. Like, oh god, I'm screwed. But it was like perfectly fine somehow, the board. And you can just tell because like the extra density with these newer designs. So I don't actually know. I need to figure it out. Maybe I'll try to talk to them a little bit to figure this out. But like, why is helium different in terms of the fiberglass upper top than I-Bolic? Like, because if it's the same glassing, then there might be an extra skin or something. That might be it too. FIREWIRE does a pretty good job of showing you on the site like the layers that go into it. So let's even try to go to that. And the layers, let's see, show me them layers. Show me them layers. If anyone in the comments or chat wants to chime in about what you reckon about how the layers work, they're not really showing it here, but like they have it on the, I think the mashup, they had like an image where they show you all the layers that go into the board. And like helium, they have a little bit of different stuff, but on the very top of the board doesn't seem too different unless it has a new volcanic material. So I think that's interesting. Let's see if I can find this. Specifications. I'm having trouble tracking it down now. Or they show you the layers, but really in the end, the I-Bolic, the main claim with it is like the all foam construction. Like it's all foam essentially. So I mean, it's not a foam board, but I think the all foam definitely makes it overall lighter, and that's pretty sweet because the LFT, having any kind of stringer is going to add some weight, and it's probably going to even add. It will add some stiffness, but the stringer lets the board flex because there's two halves, and that's what's great about this is it does have two halves, but the foam stringer might even do a little better job at the flexing. And I think that I'm really excited to try this as a quad, and then maybe switch it out as a tri. But what you'll notice is that the fins are set up like kind of far. I think it may be a little far up, these two, but then these two seem to me like they're far up as well. Like these are all, no, they're far back. I mean, so like if you look at the mashups quad setup, like this seems like less area than the quad on that. And I think that's because he can bring these up a little bit because this is going to do more work than just a swallowtail. So it's a really interesting board and really keen to give it a go. It's going to stay there, it's going to fall. That is going to stay. I think there's a reason why it's like a staple and they kind of brought it back. And it's funny because now Tomo and Kelly have a few boards, but this one seems to me hands down like Kelly's favorite Tomo collaboration, because now he has a few of his own boards, Slater Designs, that Tomo isn't involved with, maybe is a little bit, but they don't have like his Tomo signature quad thing right here or any of this crazy stuff. So that's pretty cool because like these are some of the best surfers and best shapers in the world, like teaming up to make unique things that we're not seeing. It's similar to Dan Mann and Rob Machado, and even Dan Mann and Kelly doing stuff. But I think in the end, like what this board is best for is it can grovel, and I'm going to see that, but it's really like kind of a great daily driver board because you can't be fooled by what this tail does. Like it's very similar to the Revo Max, where you think it's going to be a good board, but then when you ride it and you realize what's going on right here and like the spine technology stuff, you're just like, oh wow, like this is like a cool feeling that I'm not really used to it. And what it is, it's just very precise. It's a lot of like precision and precise movements that make for a really fun ride and a unique ride. Because like the mashup, over here, the poor mashup, which is collecting dust, has a lot of pivot and has a lot of response, but it feels like a lot more out of control. Whereas on the Revo Max, like with this stuff going on, I never really felt out of control. And it's funny because it's a twin fin board. So twin fins are notorious for being out of control, especially backside. But today I had a 6 sesh on the Revo Max, and it was a bigger, slopier backside day that was getting kind of hollow and dredgy, which usually that's the twin fin like Achilles heel when it starts to get dredgy and you need to like cut in the water and pivot. That's what this does really well. And it's very similar in concept, that it has this, and it all comes together right here. But then with the addition of this, it's a whole new world, like in Aladdin. So I wonder why he didn't even opt to go for this tail in the Revo Max. I mean, it would have been interesting. But to me, the Revo Max looks a lot like the Cymatic. It's like a bigger Cymatic. So I look at the Cymatic, especially in the Volcanic, it looks kind of like he took the Revo Max and he just stretched it down a little bit. It looks kind of like the Revo or the Evo as well, but it's in the I-Bolic Volcanic, and it's a 5-fin. But the Cymatic is marketed and talked about being a like ultra performance board, and the dims are a lot less volumed out, and I think it's even more skateboardy. Or this is somehow more grovelly, and for me it's a bit confusing because I'm just so used to a board with the pointy nose being more high performance than any board with a circular nose like the Cymatic. But the Cymatic, he's even calling an ultra high performance board. I've never even really heard that. That to me is like a, FKR or FKJ, whatever it's called. RFK, yeah, FKR. Sounds like RFK. The FKR boards. Let's see what they're calling these. Oh, it's the rocker for Kelly. That's the abbreviation of RFK. There you go. You learn something new every day. And it was actually Dan Mann's first ever shape for Kelly Slater. So that's pretty cool. And all those boards are in the same new technology as this board, the I-Bolic core with fiberglass construction. So it seems to be Kelly's preferred FIREWIRE technology. And again, I'm starting to really like the epoxy boards. I mean, the spring and just the liveliness you get, it's like, for me, it's pretty addicting. And I don't really, unless I'm riding like my big Vargo board, which is like an 8-foot long board, that's where I don't mind like it's plowing through water. But the epoxy, unless it's like super big or just crazy chop, it is like a really nice ride, especially because they're starting to figure out like how to add stringers and how to make it feel more like a PU. And this is the closest you're going to get to PU in this technology. Again, I've ridden a bunch of the other epoxy brands, and none of them even come close, in my opinion. Like they feel like what we complain about epoxy. I'm not going to say any names. I still think every board's cool, but like I'm not on this board and I'm like, oh, this feels weird. It just feels like a normal surfboard. Yeah, so I think that about sums it up, guys. I just want to hop on for a quick stream here. I'm really excited about this to give it a go. Hope I get some footage with it. That's the goal. And then definitely have some more stuff planned. So stay tuned. And I would say give this thing a try if you're ever in the market for like a newer daily driver shortboard. I know a lot of other guys have talked about this board and reviewed this board. It's not old news, but the I-Bolic is kind of making it have a resurgence because it's a cool new technology for a board that is an older board. I mean, the first one, all right, going to overtime, 33 minutes. The first one came out in I'm not even sure, but a long time ago. I mean, it might have been 7 years ago or 8 years ago. I'm trying to find it right now. When did it get released? See, the 2.0 is really taking over. This is saying 2016, so yeah, that's coming on 10 years ago. So the tail isn't really new, but it hasn't been put in too many other boards besides this, the Cymatic, and maybe a few of other Tomo's kind of side shapes. But even in the first one, it was definitely more so for like good waves. This one I think will grovel a little better just due to the dims, I think, being a little more volumed. I'm trying to look for the old SCI-FI dims. Because now it's, oh, here it is. So, yeah, it's like a liter or two less in the same length. So, and it's a little wider. So really kind of enlarged it some. And then with the new I-Bolic, I think it is breathing new life because the LFT is great, but like I was saying, it's kind of brittle and it's as close to PU as FIREWIRE was getting, I think, until the I-Bolic. But and the older one definitely seemed to be a little more narrow, and the wing might have been a little higher, but again, it's very similar, and you can tell that it's and they're even saying it's a mashup of classic curves and modern rocker, served with the futuristic twist of fluid dynamic principles likely found in the design archives of Bruce Wayne. So even Bruce Wayne was in the convo 10 years ago. Um, but even some discussion about it is people like really like the original one. So when the I-Bolic came out, I think it was a great call because it's like I'm always bummed when surfboards that are great getting stopped made. And again, I'll never ever forget when they stopped making the pod mod American. It's like you can't find them anymore. I mean, they're in the torque, but the torque is kind of the epoxy that I don't seem to ride very well on. But like this seems to be a shape where when it's so well loved, like why not just update it? And that's why it's the 2.0 because they decided, well, we got to keep it. We got to keep this cool tail and update it. What I like too is it has a good bit of rocker. So for someone like me who doesn't surf shortboards anymore, you can see it does have a bit of rocker at the nose, like a good bit, which is nice because that just means it's gonna not nosedive as much when you're paddling or you're surfing. And then because it keeps its thickness, you know, you can tell it's no slouch in the thickness department. I mean, the Revo Max is for sure more refined in the rail. The rail is a lot thinner in the Revo Max. A good bit wider too, and then in the Revo Max, because it keeps going up, it doesn't get. It pretty much is like as thin as the nose of this board. The Revo Max is really thin. So I won't even mind if like the Revo Max had this kind of volume where it was, you know, the 6.3 had 38 liters. I think he did that because the Revo Max is, I think, more of a like mid-length board that in the end was like, oh, we should also do like smaller ones too. But in order to like increase it that much, like the 7.0 is 56 liters. Well, that means the 6.0 can't have 40 liters because how are you going to stretch it out if it's already that much liters at the 6.0? Unless you go up more minuscule, but he only has 5 or 6 ones out. And the overall standing on the Revo Max, I think, is like the bigger sizes are like really sick. And most people are actually that I've talked to are getting at least the 6.3, but a lot of people are getting the 6.9 and the 7.0. And a lot of people are liking it. And even one of the guys at FIREWIRE, shout out, we were talking and he was saying like he rode, I think the 7.0, 6.9 or 7.0. And he was riding and he got towards the end and he was like, oh, I might just like walk up here and did like a little walk. And he was pretty much hanging 5. And it was like, wow, I'm not even like shaking or moving. This is actually working really well. And that's what I noticed too on the 6.3. So it's crazy that even the board at 35 liters to me was very doable to ride like as a longboard. So yeah, if anyone has any more questions or info, I think I'm gonna first try the quad, which I'm keen on because I am not a quad guy. I want to be a quad guy more though. So the goal is to try quads more. But every time I try quads, unless it's like a super swallowed fish, it just seems like it's a little too tight and not pivoting in the pocket as much. Just from my past experience, because it's like the more fin, the harder it's going to be to cut. But this thing with the quad, especially these Endorphin quads, which again, they're like light as a feather. There's a commercial that I think Aaron Lieber was helping to make. So shout out Aaron, but he even showed in it like feathers and zooming in. You're like, oh, that's really cool. But now I feel like when you hold these, you're like, oh wait, these are light as a feather. These are by far the lightest fins I've ever felt. They kind of remind me of like there was the FCS epoxy fins. They were like blue and white back in the day, and they were super light. They were pretty much like the M5s or the G5s. But these are very much like them. But I think with these, they're like some kind of air core. Let's see. What are these fins? Kelly Endorphin fins 5 set. They are a pretty penny. It's $190, but you get 5 fins. You're essentially getting 2 different sets of fins in one, which is pretty sick. Like you're getting a quad set and a tri set. And the tri set to me, it looks a lot like the AM2s or the AM1s, which I think are the best templates. They're very just like standard and Reiki. And they have a good bit of volume right there, like right here, but they get thin right here, which is kind of nice. And for being so light, they're actually pretty stiff. There is some flex. They kind of remind me of like a honeycomb fin, which I actually usually don't like that much. I don't know why. This honeycomb for me, it's like it doesn't seem to want to give me as much drive, and it kind of is a little weird. But these, let's see what they say. An upright fin set, which is pretty much the AM2s or AM1s are very upright fins, with incredible pivot. Yeah, so designed by Kelly. He said it's an upright template that's designed to pivot, really comes to life in hollow waves, critical pockets. And if you prefer a tight pocket, and Kelly, I do. So that makes me even more stoked on these because I think the twin fin setup of these is very similar because it has a lot of pivot, and you can even see when you're holding them. Let me grab them really quick. Yeah, so we're in focus. Okay. Yeah, so the Kelly 2+2 twins are like, well, they're big. They're kind of like a blown up version of this. So these are the twins, and these are the quad thruster set. So you can see they're very similar in shape. Very similar, which is interesting. Yeah, they're very similar. They're kind of almost the same template. These are just super sized because they're more quad. They might have a little bit more foil and then stay a little thicker as you get right here. And what's funny is I like how Kelly still used like his circle logo, which back in the day, the Kelly, I heard it was called, like his main fins. And he used to be on FCS, I believe. So he's kind of done a, well, I think these actually come in, yeah, they do. These come in both FCS and Futures. And Kelly might just be on both companies, or I'm not sure how he does it, but all FIREWIRE boards are now Futures. Like that's kind of what they went with. Which I think is cool because then you're not like, oh, do I need to buy? We've all kind of all collected a fin set over the years. I was Team FCS for a long time, but I kept plowing them into boards and breaking fin boxes. So I'm actually kind of over FCS. I'm a little butthurt, I guess you could say, because they've broken like 4 fin boxes in the last 2 years. I still haven't broke a fin box with Futures. So, and the only time I've made a ding is like I somehow brought it out and wasn't paying attention and like dug it in a little bit, but it was super user error. It wasn't the fins fault at all. But that's why I think I'm gonna like the Endorphin like 5 fin setup or 4 fins or tri fin because it's pretty much like the AM2s, which also makes me think that as a quad, when you have more pivoty fins and they're not like maybe the keel fins that Rob has, his keel fins and his Seaside Beyond that he likes. For me, those, I don't know how to ride those at all. Like I feel like I'm a total beginner on a wave storm. And it's like I'm trying to just, I feel I'm just like that. Like I can't cut in and pivot. So my hypothesis is that even though this is a quad, that's kind of I think what Tomo prefers, because they're pivoty fins, and you have these, I mean, 3 to 4 points on each side, and this, it's gonna be like it kind of creates almost like a mashup effect, but more controlled and almost more pivot points. So it's pretty cool. And I think it's a great like re-addition to a board that the surf community just really likes, and it was kind of a hit. Um, and even the fins, like I'm looking at the characteristics right now. What foil is it's kind of like the thickness that, and then it kind of goes down or stays up more fat. Fat PHAT. I saw my boy clipped my fat clip. I know you're trying to cancel me by putting on the internet that I'm calling people fat, so I'm gonna have to ask you to take that down. But I guess you can keep it up. But if it has like too much foil and then it kind of like doesn't get precise here, then it's probably going to be more like a keel fin. Now, keel fin's a little more like, yes, fat and then less of a tip, but there's so many little precise like micro things going on in fins that, I mean, you could be like a expert in physics and then that's how you need to make fins. Like, it's really crazy how, think about what a surfboard fin is and then how there's like tons of options. There's heaps and heaps of options. Well, it's just a fin. How complicated can it be? Well, it's just a surfboard. How complicated can that be? So all the options and all the little micro adjustments create like a new feeling. So when you have something like this, which is just like there's no other board that has anything like the tail, and then like the right here the channels. I mean, there are channels, but not his like quad concave thing. That again, I've only seen in his boards. I mean, maybe some other boards do have it if anyone wants to comment, but yeah, this board's super unique. I'm really excited to give it a go. And I'm really sad I don't have the Revo Max anymore. It was a pretty sad day. I got my last surf on it. The good folks at FIREWIRE needed it back and needed to go back to its home. But I am looking to lock it in the quiver. There is some hope there. So a new hope for locking it in the quiver. And it's going to be sad because like I almost want to try the big one now, like the bigger Revo Maxes, because it's such a, I know the Revo Max is all the hype right now, and especially on like the internets. I've noticed from my YouTube analytics that a lot of people are searching for the Revo Max, and it's kind of like the new board syndrome. Like the new board comes out, old boards like the mashup, it's old news. Who needs that thing anymore? But certain times there are boards, like when the Pod mod came out, that are game changers. And I think that's what the SCI-FI was and the SCI-FI 2.0 is, because you're creating a classic Revo Max type board that kind of shifted what the industry was doing. And then you're just making it in like the newer technology, like the newer innards, which is great because people are going to be like, well, I want to ride my SCI-FI more, but now they don't make it anymore. Well, now you do make it. So I think that's great when, FIREWIRE seems to do that pretty well, where they will know what boards are doing good and kind of like either update them, like the sweet potato seems to get updated a bunch, or try to just mold them into the newer technology they're using. Even like the new helium, is different than the old helium, but they didn't just knock off boards that were old. I mean, or they made like the Go Fish into the Two Fish. So it's cool when they don't just ditch a shape because it's old. If it's selling good and people are liking it, put a little new twist on it, and then it's kind of like reborn again. And just fine tune a couple little things. Like on this, I think it's going to be a little better groveler. That's what Tommy Surfs was saying, and the internet seems to believe. especially for like a short board. And that's what the mashup made me realize is like, as long as the board can be a short board, but if there's like enough going on in the tail and you just, know what you're doing, you can ride smaller boards and ride them well. But you have to go into it with the mindset of like, this isn't 1999 anymore, and it's not going to be like a 6.0. I mean, for Kelly Slater, I feel like he's still riding the 1999 boards, even like the S-Boss. And now we're getting into the hour mark. I might as well hit the hour mark. If the ZV1 doesn't blow up, I feel like there's some glitching and the poor ZV1's like ready to blow up in flames. But like, to me, the S-Boss and the Boss Up look like a 1999 board. I mean, even the sizing isn't that crazy. The S-Boss, what is it? The S-Boss, the 510 is only 31 liters, which is pretty insane. Like, the S-Boss only gets the 6.4 at 37 liters. So I think that was a case where, like, they realized, well, some people want to ride like more board than 37 liters. I mean, that's like almost getting to my, not bottom level, but like if I'm like lazy and it's January 31st and it's freezing out and you're in like all this rubber, you want to just like cruise. You don't want to have to like, I mean, unless you're Rob Kelly surfing in the snow, because Rob, you're crazy and I love it. But I have turned into like a kind of an old wuss, and I like being warm and having float, and my goal is to surf again tomorrow. So whatever helps me surf a good session and to reach my goal of surfing tomorrow, I'm gonna appreciate. And if they only have it in 37.7 liters, like say you're 55 and you're like, well, the S-Boss looks sick. Oh, but like I'm 240, like don't know if I can ride this. We're getting copyright, get away. I don't know if I can ride this 6.4 38 liter board. Well, then they made the Boss Up, which, it's kind of like the trend of the seaside to the seaside and beyond. The market now, dictates what the consumer wants, and now more consumers, they want more board, they want more float. If you're not catching waves, then you're missing the whole point of like why you're surfing. Like, you surf to catch waves. I mean, you also surf to be out in nature and be in the environment, be in the ocean and meditate and reset. But if you're out there just floating around, not catching waves, but you're on like the coolest new board, it doesn't really matter what you have. So I think that's why FIREWIRE's come out with stuff like the Boss Up and then the Long Rider, I believe it's called. And then even reissued the Seaside and Beyond in helium. Because there is a market for like these people that, we want to ride a short gravelly board, but maybe we do want to actually have paddling where we're not arching our neck, or it's just like we don't really want the board to be like a small little sweet potato. I mean, I do like that. But even me now, that was like kind of a de-evolution where for a while I was riding bigger boards and really liking it. So now I think that it's nice to have both options, and you're missing a whole chunk of the market if you're not making boards that people that are 240 and above can ride. And why not take a popular model and remake it into a bigger model? Because people can actually like know what it is. Because when you make a new model like the Long Rider doesn't have a smaller model. So it's kind of like, well, what is the Long Rider? Is it like what is it? There's no reference point for it. To me, it looks a lot like the S-Boss, but the dims are actually quite different, and the technology is different. It's helium. I think you can get it with helium. No, it's only helium. So And when you see like Kevin Schultz riding the Long Rider versus riding the Boss Up, they are very different rides to me, it looks like. I think I prefer how the Boss Up rides. But it's going to be a lot depending on how you surf a board. Like the Long Rider, let's compare the two. So because I think these are two boards that like are conflicting right now. Is the Boss Up and the Long Rider? They came out not too far away from each other, and to me they're very similar shapes. They have the pintail, they have the 5-pin setup, they have kind of the roundy pointy nose, but the Boss Up comes in the I-Bolic, and it comes in the Volcanic on top of the I-Bolic, which I think is the new GOAT. The Volcanic Ibolic could be like the new most lit stuff. I think it rides better than Volcanic Helium. I don't know what the difference is there. Maybe just the no wood in there. But even the specs. So the Boss Up at 6'10" is 43 liters. The Long Rider at 6'10" is 42.6 liters. So it's pretty much like 1 liter more. But then it's also about an inch wider, and it's pretty similar in thinness. So they're still pretty similar boards, but the Long Rider seems to me like it's a little more beefed up. Actually, when you get up, like the 7.4 Long Rider is 52 liters. The 7.4 Boss Up's 48 liters. And the Boss Up being Kelly Slater's mid-length, it's gonna not be as like inflated and gnarly as a board like the Long Rider. Um, I would think that I'd actually probably like the Long Rider more than like the CSET and Beyond. Now this is just because again I've beat it with a stick at this point, but when you have a really big mid length, the swallowtail, every now and then you can kick it. It can kind of suck. A rounder tail, it's not going to be as intense to kick. And also, I find when a board is really stretched out, that's when the round tail does work really well. Somehow because the board's so big, then you can kind of lay over each side and it's going to just keep plowing through. But when the board is getting a little tinier, that's where, crazy tails like this kind of can work a little better when it's small than a round tail. And that's also why Kelly's S-Boss has the round tail, because it's like his high performance board. So he's not really riding that in like crappy small surf. He's riding that in good waves where there's going to be a pocket, there's going to be some speed. So I've been interested to see what people think about the Long Rider, because again, I thought the Kevin Schultz videos, he was riding the Boss Up a lot more high performance than the Long Rider. And I think it's even called the Long Rider because it wants to be ridden pretty cruisy. The Long Rider, they say it's a fast paddling, easy riding performance mid-length that have you making the most out of every day, whether you're beginner, intermediate, or advanced. And that's, I think, exactly what's going on, where the Long Rider is kind of more like a CSAT and Beyond, but probably even easier to ride for a beginner because it has the 5 fins. You could ride it with the tri-fin if you wanted. And it has kind of a curvier nose, and the specs are pretty similar to the CSAT and Beyond. It's a little more fat, PHAT, and has a little more girth. But the shapes are actually very similar of the Boss Up and the Long Rider. So it's funny how they're very similar boards, and even the description for the Boss Up pretty much is Kelly's first ever performance mid-length, versus the Long Rider is a fast paddling, easy riding performance mid-length. I don't even know if performance should be there. It should just be a fast paddling, easy riding board. that isn't going to want to like do crazy top to bottom in the pocket. Whereas the boss up, you could see Kevin Schultz was doing a lot of in the pocket surfing. It could even be too when the helium is kind of stretched out that it ends up being like a little more of a glidey board because it is like so light. And to me, the helium, it doesn't dig in as well as the I-Bolic. But like the Seaside and Beyond, they reissued that in helium, which is funny that they didn't. I wonder why they didn't do it in the I-Bolic, but it could be because just I'm not sure, to be honest, because the old sci-fi, even the Sci-Fi 2.0, it was an LFT, and that's what the Seaside and Beyond is in LFT. But then they made this on I-Bolic, and they made the Seaside and Beyond in helium. And they do have a helium with volcanic lamination. It's even called volcanic reprieve. So I'm not sure exactly what the difference there is. But it's interesting that they I don't know why they went with that. I mean, I think that came out a little earlier than the new I-Bolic. I'm even surprised that I haven't seen this in the I-Bolic volcanic yet, because I think that would be pretty awesome. Maybe Kelly just likes. Well, the Boss Ups comes in volcanic, so and I think the S Boss comes in volcanic. I mean, a bunch of his boards come in volcanic. The FRK Plus comes in volcanic, yeah, and the S Boss does come in volcanic. So I think this board potentially will come in volcanic. And actually, you know what? This board came out before volcanic was even out. I think that's what it was too. Is volcanic came out pretty recently. And we're past an hour. There we go. We did it. Apologize if I'm a little slow today. We're all having the winter sickness. I'm right there with you. I have 3 teas in here. I have the Yogi tea, which says trust your identity, be in touch with your reality, and friendship is a gift that lasts. So we can all be friends and have a long-lasting friendship. Thank you, Yogi. But I'm trying to see when this volcanic came out. And I'm not able to find it, but I think it was probably right when this came out, or maybe even right after this. So maybe this will come out. But oh no, there it is. Sci-Fi 2.0 and volcanic right there. Well, would you look at that? So this isn't volcanic. So forget everything I just said the last hour and a half hour. So sweet. So I don't know why I didn't see that. So I think this thing in I-Bolic volcanic would be the most lit. But again, I'm pretty excited. I've never ridden straight up I-Bolic, and we'll see how that goes. Oh, you know what? I only see the. Right there it is. Okay, yeah. So it's there. Might be kind of a newer edition, but I'm sure that ride's really great. It's gonna be hard to beat that because I might like it more than helium. I do like the helium a lot, but I'm interested to see how I like straight I-Bolic versus helium, and then the I-Bolic volcanic versus I-Bolic. And at this point, after this, I've ridden all the new technology FIREWIRE has. I've ridden all of it, so I can kind of really gauge what I think I like the most. And so far, my number one probably has to be the I-Bolic volcanic, and then regular helium in number 2. And I probably like LFT more than helium with volcanic. The helium with volcanic so far, I've kind of ridden boards that are maybe a little more oversized than warranted, but that's where I think that stiffness with the helium is more noticeable than the I-Bolic with the volcanic. It seems to me like it's a little less stiff and rides better than the helium with the volcanic. So take it with a grain of salt. But even like a lot of the shapes that I've been seeing that are helium, do have the Volcanic, whereas the I-Bolic, they've added that addition. But now it looks like most of their shapes have both the options, have a non-volcanic or volcanic. So it seems to be like it's here to stay. I wonder if they'll even eventually go to all volcanic, but I think in the end it's maybe they won't. Maybe people do want to have just the whiteboard and with the fiberglass and just a little bit of it is a little less stiff, especially the helium version. So I think it's a little jarring. Maybe even visually, maybe people are like, oh, this is like a weird color or whatever. One side thing about the volcanic is it does actually get a little hot. Now it doesn't get as hot as the carbon fiber straight up, but because it's essentially like kind of almost a black board, it's gray. You do have to be a little wary of like just having the wax in the sun straight up for like 30 minutes. Like you have to be a little more aware than if it was just a whiteboard. It definitely does get a teeny bit more wax melty, which was interesting because I didn't think that was going to happen. And it's not an issue or anything, nowhere near as an issue as like the all black board. But it is one thing to consider, like maybe if you're in like the super tropics, who knows if that actually would have something to do with it. Oh, we got a like. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. We're gonna. Yeah, and if anyone, if you haven't subscribed yet, I appreciate people, chiming in. And I just lost a couple people because I asked to subscribe. I'm sorry. We have to do that as YouTubers. We have to beg you to subscribe, and we have to beg you to hit like, because that is how the algorithm lets us get this more people, because it sees, oh, they liked it, they subscribed, we must pass this on. There's also a couple of new things. If you want to show your support, you can like super thanks me, or leave a super sticker or a super chat. And a super chat's kind of cool because it kind of like gives the creator a quick donation, and then your chat pops up on the screen. So if you really want to enter that level of internet infamy, you just click the little money sign and then super chat, and then it'll pop up on the screen, and you can like, it's permanently in there forever. So besides me just reading it, you get to have it permanently on there. And I'm also gonna probably try to do like a membership thing here at some point, even just to kind of like get the ball rolling there. But I think it'd be cool to have some like more uncensored content. I don't know if they censor you as much there, but it is nice not to have to watch every word. I have to look more into that because I'm not too sure if you still have to be on your best behavior there or not. That's why a lot of people use Patreon, because you can kind of do a lot more there. YouTube takes a big cut when you do like a Patreon type membership. They take like 30%. Membership's just like you pay $1 for the month, and then like people do shout outs or do like special live streams. But on Patreon, there's not really, I don't think there's any cut, or maybe it's a very small cut, and it's actually way more uncensored because it's not even like a public facing platform. There's like you have to pay to go to the Patreon page, and then you are in like this person's own personal queue, and it's like a free for all. I mean, I think you can even have PRON content on there. I'm not too sure. I wouldn't know anything about that because this is a PG family show. But yeah, guys, I always feel bad leaving when we have people in the chat, but if they don't want us to have any more input or questions, I reckon I'm going to leave it at that. Need to get up early and catch some shredding surf. But thank you again. And I'm glad we went kind of long on this one. I was a little under the weather. I'm feeling great after my yogi tea. But I'm super stoked to get this thing on the internet and get this thing live, because now it's there forever. You'll have to look at it all day. And I'm really excited about riding it. And it's a really cool board. And I'm now a Tomo fanboy. And I do believe this will be my first Kelly Slater shape I've ridden. So hopefully I am as good as Kelly after I ride this. But I appreciate everyone for tuning in to another Heroes live stream. Till next time, peace.